leads us to chapter 7. In chapter 7, it's called Poofed. This is where Heidi gets a chance to meet her uncle, who she's not really happy with because, remember, he sent her away to the girls' home, and that's where we left off. So chapter 7. Heidi, come to me, niece, a man's voice said from the darkness above the stairs. The girl froze, and then she moved to the source of the voice as commanded, climbing the stairs slowly. She peered into a vast, dark room. You got my letters? Asked the voice of Uncle Hamish. Somewhere in the back depths of a huge chair, Cassius stood nearby, eyes glowing like embers. And if you remember on page 43, there's a picture of him, and you can see the eyes glowing on Cassius there. I like the way that that's illustrated. Yeah, that's Cassius. That's the poodle. And if you check out his chair, you can see his chair is like a big giant dog, and then the paintings on the wall are like these big giant paintings of fancy schmancy dogs that they used to raise there. Yep, got him, said Heidi, standing in the doorway, unsmiling. You look like your mother, Heidi, said Hamish. Well, that's a relief, Uncle. People start looking like their dogs after enough time. She stared at her uncle. It's been 8 years. I figured I might start looking like the nuns. Hamish was silent for a moment. I know you're angry, Heidi, he finally said. He suddenly stood up into the firelight. He was still in his pajamas. His hair was long and mussed. I knew how to sight the slightest detour on the backbone of a Pukistan dinglehound from 200 feet. I could massage out the kinks from the curls of the crested Cape Town kinkapoodle. I knew how to nurse 20 puppies with 20 bottles with 2 hands and another 5 with my feet. 20! Hamish pointed at Heidi. But I couldn't braid a 6-year-old girl's ponytail. I do my own braiding, said Heidi, not buying it for a second. He ran his hand through his hair. I'm sorry. Parenting you would have made as much sense as Cassius here herding sheep. The horror, said Cassius. The grass stains. Heidi felt a bag on her shoulder move. The dachshund wanted out. I do too, thought Heidi. And if you go back to that picture, I didn't even catch it the first time. Look at the bag that Heidi's holding. You can see him peeking out. Yeah, I didn't catch that the first time. So I don't know if you caught this, but Berkeley Breed, the author, is also the illustrator of this book. So like these pictures are ones that he created. I love the artwork in this book. It reminds me of Brian Selznick, the author of Hugo Cabaret. He wrote and illustrated Hugo Cabaret. It's a fantastic story. Check it out if you don't know it. And you guys all read Wonderstruck. Yes, same author. So author and illustrator, they make some really cool books like this. Yes?
On this book right here, is it the same? No.
Go ahead. Is it the same one? Okay. We can talk after if you think of it. Hamish collapsed back into his huge chair and put his face in his hands. He spoke quietly this time. It was me who dreamed of finding a champion Tibetan yak nibbler hound. It was my dream. But when the hot air balloon went down in the storm over the Himalayan mountains, it wasn't me in it, Heidi. It was your parents. I had sent them instead. He looked up at the little girl. Me. It should have been me. Hamish looked empty. The dogs in the paintings seemed to peer down at the rumpled man with cold judgment. I think I died too, Heidi. This was no longer a place for life for show dogs or little girls. He collected himself and stood again. But you're older now. There's something I want you to see. Hamish moved unsteadily toward the towering window covered with heavy curtain tapestry. All I want now is for you to stay. All this. McLeod Heavenly Acres will be yours soon. It's time you made it so. This house, this world, it's yours. Mine? Sputtered Heidi. She suddenly noticed Mrs. Beaglehole standing in one of the room's dark corners, listening and watching carefully, quietly. Cassius sat next to her, doing the same. The huge poodle rose and moved to Heidi, where he slipped his long, bony nose into her hand, dangling at her side, so that the fingers cradled his chin. He looked up at her with coal black eyes. No. Ours, said Cassius. She pulled her hand away. Hamish drew back the window curtains, flooding the room with dazzling light. Heidi looked out the window and gasped. The entire population of Piddleton was in the backyard. Cars covered the nearby hills. Brightly striped tents sat amidst the verdant gardens, and people milled about in the sprawling lawn in their finest Sunday clothes. The women were festooned with sparkling bracelets and astonishingly large hats in the shape of inverted serving bowls. Men sported two-tone shoes and pressed cream trousers. Children chased each other and dropped ice cream onto lace-trimmed skirts. And each gloved hand held a leash, and at the end of which was a strutting hound of traffic-stopping beauty. Of brushed and curled and poofed fur glistened like woven gold, and noses and backbones aligned more perfectly than the pyramids of Egypt. The ancient oaks overhead seemed almost to bow at the sight of so much naked dog glamour passing below them.
That's nasty.
The pampered paws moved toward a central clearing on the lawn, around which hundreds of white folding chairs awaited the pressed linen bottoms of their proud owners. A woman with a clipboard stood waving in the center. It's a dog show, Heidi. Staring below, guessing correctly that it wasn't the spring tractor pull. The Piddleton Open, said her uncle with real zeal. Held here at McLeod Heavenly Acres every year for the past 100. Go down there and dip in your toes, niece. It's your new pond. Mine? Asked Heidi again, eyes wide, incredulous. She looked down at the rolling ocean of flowered hats and perfumed spaniels as she would lava. Are you coming with me, Uncle? She looked up to see that she was alone. Uncle? She whispered into the room's darkness. There was only silence. The firelight flickered on the faces of the dogs and the paintings, staring down now at her.